So, ladies and gentlemen, what makes a superstar in baseball? Well, quality of play, leadership, durability, the ability to snatch victory from the levels of defeat that are featured in every contest. But this guy is a legend that beyond one of the best players of the 19th century in Major League Baseball, and his name drew fear among pitchers throughout North America. Cap Anson. Now, Adrian Constantine Anson, born in Marshalltown, Iowa, was nicknamed Cap for Captain and Pop. He was a Major League Baseball first baseman, including his time in the National Association. He played a record 27 consecutive seasons. He was regarded as one of the greatest players of his era and one of the first superstars of the game. He spent most of his career with the Cubs franchise, then known as the White Stockings, later Colts, serving as the Cubs manager, first baseman, and later in his tenure, minority owner. He led the team to 6 National League pennants in the 1880s. One of baseball's first great hitters, and probably the first to tally over 3,000 career hits, because there was some question about the statistics garnered. Either he had less than 3,000 or almost 3,500. In addition to being a star player, he innovated managerial techniques such as signals between players and the rotation of pitchers. He played a major role in establishing the racial segregation in pro baseball that persisted until the late 1940s. On several occasions, Anson refused to take the field when the opposing roster included black players. His demands may have been cited as a representative of players' attitudes by team owners of the International League, the top tier of the minor leagues, when they voted on July 14, 87, to ban the signing of new contracts with black players. But ironically, his negative efforts led to the Negro Baseball League, which probably gave it a chance for more black players to develop. After retiring as a player and leaving the Colts, he briefly managed the New York Giants. He ran several enterprises in Chicago, including a billiards and bowling hall and a semi-pro baseball team he dubbed Anson's Colts. He also toured extensively in the vaudeville circuit, performing monologues and songs. Many of his business ventures failed. As a result, he lost his ownership stake in the Colts, by then known as the Cubs, and filed for bankruptcy. He was inducted in the National Baseball Hall of Fame all the way back in 1939. Now, born in Marshalltown, beginning in 1866, he spent 2 years at a high school age boarding school at the University of Notre Dame after being sent there by his father in hopes of curtailing his mischievousness, sort of like Babe Ruth. His time away did little to discipline him. Soon after return home, his father sent him to University of Iowa, where his bad behavior resulted in school asking him to leave after one semester. Now, with the National Association, he played in a number of competitive baseball clubs in his youth, and of course the NA at the age of 18, primarily third for the Rockford Four Cities, one of the original teams of the association. At the time, he was one of the biggest players in the league at 6'2", 220 pounds. After being traded to the Philly Athletics in 1872 and 1873, he finished in the NA's top 5 in batting, on-base percentage, and on-base slugging. He led the NA in OPB in 1872. His numbers did decline slightly in 1874 and 75, but he was still good enough that Chicago White Stockings secretary turned president William Hulbert sought him to improve his club for the 1876 season. Hulbert broke league rules by negotiating with Anson and several other stars when the 1875 season was still in progress, and he ultimately founded a new National League to forestall any disciplinary action. Anson, who had been engaged to a Philadelphia native in the meantime, had second thoughts about going west, but Hulbert held Anson to his contract and eventually wore him to the Windy City. Now, the White Stockings won their first league title but fell off the pace the following 2 years. During this time, Anson was a solid hitter but not quite a superstar. Both his fortunes and those of the team would change after Anson was named captain manager of the club in 1879. Now, his new role led to the nickname Cap, though newspapers typically called him by the more formal Captain Anson or Capped Anson. With Anson pacing the way, the White Stockings won 5 pennants between 1880 and 1886. They were helped to the titles using new managerial tactics, including a third base coach, having one fielder back up another, signaling batters, and a rotation of 2 star pitchers. In the first half of the 1880s, aided by speedy players like Mike Kelly, Anson had his players aggressively run the bases, forcing the opposition into making errors. After the expression first became popular in the 1890s, he retroactively claimed to use some of the first hit-and-run plays. Now, he shares credit as an innovator of the modern spring training, along with the president of the Chicago club, the great Albert Spalding. They were among the first to send their clubs to warmer climates in the South to prepare for the season, starting with Hot Springs, Arkansas in 1886. On the field, he was the team's best hitter and run producer. In the 1880s, he won two batting titles, 1881, 1888, and finished second four times, 1880, 82, 86, and 87. Now, during the same period, he led the league in runs batted in 7 times, 80 to 82 inclusive, 84 to 86 inclusive, and 1888. His best season was in 1881 when he led the league in batting with 399, OPB at 442, OPS at 952, hits 137, total bases 175, and RBIs 82. He also became the first player to hit 3 consecutive home runs, 5 homers in 2 games, and 4 doubles in a game, as well as being the first to perform 2 unassisted double plays in a game. He is one of the only few players to score 6 runs in a game, a feat he accomplished on August 24th, 1886. Now, when he signed a 10-year contract in 88 to manage the White Stockings, which, because of a typo error, he failed a spot, ended after the 1897 season instead of 1898, but his best years were behind him. He led the league in walks in 1890 and garnered his 8th and final RBI crown in 1891. On the managerial front, he failed to win another pennant. Now, in the end of the 1880s approach, the club had been trading away its stars in favor of young players, with the exception of the veteran Anson. Local newspapers had started to call the team Anson's Colts or just Colts before the decade was out. With the advent of the Players' League in 1890, what little talent the club still had was drained away, and the team nicknamed Colts, though never official, began standard usage in the local media, along with variants such as Anson's White Colts and Anson's Broncos. He also meddled enough that he became a fatherly figure, was often called a Pop. When he was fired as manager of the 1897 season, it also marked the end of his 27-year playing career. The following season, newspapers dubbed the Colts the Orphans and their lost their Pop. Now, the racial intolerance by Anson, obviously it wasn't acceptable back then. It's still not acceptable now. But the idea, it probably hampered his reputation in the South as well, because a lot of people felt he was should have been a role model for the desegregation of baseball, but never was. Now, according to a lot of published reports, he was kind of a rough guy sometimes. He also marched these players onto the field in military formation and banned alcohol consumption during the season. Starting later in the 1880s, he often bet on baseball, mainly on his team's chances to win. Today, that would be considered incongruous with moral character. However, in that era, the main concern was players taking bribes to purposely lose games. Betting by players, managers, and owners was regarded as acceptable so long as they did not bet against their team doing well or associated with gamblers. On corruption in sports, he said the following: in 1891, the time he had been, it probably was, when baseball was as rotten as horse racing, but that time has gone by. Now, allegedly, there was 162 reports of bets on regular season baseball by players, managers, club officials from 1876 to 1900. He tallied the sport's top bettors in the era as follows: Anson with 57, Jim Mutri with 9, Edward Talbot with 9, King Kelly with 7, and Frank Robson with 7. Now, there also been some controversy as to whether Anson should be considered the first player ever reached the 3,000 hit milestone. For many years, official stats credited him with achieving that goal. When the first edition of Macmillan's Baseball Encyclopedia was published in 1969, it disregarded the rule in place only for the 1897 season, which counted bases on balls, walks as hits, and at-bats instead of zeros in both categories, as there were before and have been since. His 60 walks were removed from his 1887 hit total, resulting in a career mark of 2,995, though later editions of Encyclopedia still added 5 more hits to get exactly 3,000. Now, the other controversy over Anson's total hits had to do with his 5 years in the NA. Neither Macmillan Encyclopedia editions nor LMB itself at the time recognized the National Association of being a major league. LMB.com does not count Anson's time in the NA statistics, but tallies his National League total as 3,011. This places him 25th in the all-time list. Now, other sources credit Anson with a different number of hits, largely because scoring and record-keeping was haphazard in baseball until well into the 20th century. Now, some also list he may have got as many as 3,081, and that was the total from the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, he briefly made a return to baseball in 1898 with the Giants. He then attempted to buy a Chicago team in the Western League, but failed and been opposed by Spalding. In 1900, he helped to organize a new version of the defunct American Association called the New American Baseball Association, as was named its president. However, at the first sign of trouble, he dissolved the league before a single game was played, drawing heated criticism from other backers. Now, after a number of failed business attempts, including a handball arena and bottled ginger beer that exploded on store shelves, he was later elected clerk of Chicago in 1905. After serving as one term, he failed in the Democratic primary to become sheriff in 1907. He also played with a semi-pro league in 1907, which you would call Anson's Colts. Anson initially had no intention of playing for the team, but in June 1907, at the age of 55, he started playing some games at first in an attempt to boost poor performance. Despite the draw of seeing him play, the team did not attract much attendance and lost money for Anson. Now, according to published reports, he began acting during his baseball career. In 1888, he made his stage debut with a single appearance in Hoyt's play a parlor match at the Theatre Comique in Harlan. He also played himself in an 1895 Broadway play called The Runaway Colt, written to take advantage of his fame. Later, Anson began touring on the vaudeville circuit, a common practice for athletes of the time, which lasted up until after a year before his death. Now, when he retired from vaudeville in 1921, he continued to refuse a paid pension from MLB despite having no other income. In April 22, he became the GM of a new golf club in the south side of Chicago. Now, Anson unfortunately died from a glandular ailment on April 14, 22, 3 days short of his 70th birthday. He was interred at Oakwood Cemetery in Chicago. Inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1939, he was one of the first 19th century players selected. Over 100 years after retirement, he still holds several Cubs franchise records, including most career runs batted in, runs, hits, singles, and doubles, while being the only club in the 3,000 hit club. Defensively, he also holds franchise records for putouts, but also second in franchise history for errors. Now, on the managerial side, he was the second manager to ever reach 1,000 wins after Harry Wright, a feat that has seen over 60 managers reach the mark since the 20th century. He won 1,282 games with the Cubs, a mark that still stands after a century. Just 24 other managers have won 1,000 games with one team in Major League Baseball. He still holds a Major League record for most seasons played, although Ryan equaled it in 1993. Now, in the 92 The Simpsons episode Homer at the Bat, Anson, along with several other players, was suggested by Mr. Burns as one of the players for his All-Stars baseball team to represent the Springfield power plant before being informed that you're long ago deceased. Now, in 1872, Anson, who was 20 at the time, met 13-year-old Virginia Feigl, the daughter of a Philadelphia bar and restaurant owner. The couple got married in November 21st, 1876, and the marriage lasted until her death in 1915. For the first 7 years of their marriage, the couple lived in Chicago during the baseball season and Philadelphia during the off-season, but eventually moved to Chicago on a year-round basis. Now, the Ansons had 7 children, 3 of whom died in infancy. Daughter Grace, 1877, son Adrian, 1882, and daughter Adele, April 1884, son Adrian, 1887, and daughter Dorothy in 1889, and son John Henry, 1892. He also had a daughter Virginia in 1899. So what a career in baseball. So just to basically cover most of the bases, Rockford Ford City's 1871, Philly Athletics 72 to 75, Chicago White Sox Stockings Colts 1876, 1897. Manager of the Athletics, 1875. Chicago White Stockings, 79 to 97. The Giants in 98. Two-time NL batting champion, 81, 88. Eight-time NL RBI leader, 80 to 82 inclusive, 84 to 86 inclusive, 88 and 91. Again, as high as 3,435 hits, 97 home runs, 2,075 RBIs, a managerial record of 1295, 947. And again, a great career in baseball. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our latest of our 19th century superstars in Major League Baseball. If you like what we're doing here with our podcast, let us know and like, comment, subscribe, or share. Bye.